So Rich, go ahead.
Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
All right. Well, thank you, Ed. Yeah, I feel like I just sort of jumped out of a package here. Best kept secret or a kept secret. So I'm really excited to have the opportunity to present because it really was our objective right from the beginning is let's do this work. Let's see where it will lead us. And then from there, we can start communicating and sharing and then building. And so I'm really excited to get to that moment today. I'm the director of Impact Studio, and I'm also a proud OSU alum. Make sure you know that. And today I'm going to be talking about what I describe as adjacent innovation. So adjacent innovation is a pretty simple concept. Essentially, what that refers to is for an established, successful organization to essentially use the capabilities that they've built up to become successful, leverage those in new ways to create value. So pretty simple. If we look at OSU, what are these capabilities? Well, of course, our students, the communities we serve, the organizations that hire our graduates, our faculty, our employees, the board of trustees, our brand, our research infrastructure, our operational capabilities. I mean, we could continue. Our alumni, we have a wealth. I mean, let's be clear. We have a wealth of capabilities to be leveraged in this way. Next slide, please. I'm going to start with a story. Hopefully, this will resonate with some of your stories in this innovation space. And mine goes way back to 1985 when I was a graduate student at UC Berkeley. I was also an employee of HP here in Corvallis, and I was on a fellowship. And so I was working away in my tiny graduate office when this individual walked through the door and introduced himself as a director in DARPA and invited me out to coffee. And I was surprised, but went out for coffee. And this individual pitched an idea to me for HP to enter a new market, which was called semiconductor foundry market. And frankly, I was studying a very technical field and I had no idea what this person was talking about. But to be polite, I said, well, hey, I will share that with our leadership when I visit Corvallis again. So at spring break, I came back to Corvallis and I talked to the general manager of the business and almost in passing mentioned this idea. And his response it really surprised me, said, no, we need to do this. And when are you going to finish this degree? Can you speed it up? So in fact, HP did enter the foundry semiconductor business. Over a 6-year period, we grew that business to $150 million. And then as the company strategy changed, we decided to sell that business to a new small Taiwanese company, Taiwan Semiconductor Manufacturing Company. That company is now valued at over $600 billion. When I came back from Berkeley, he asked me to join this small team to get this thing started. And what really caught my attention and what's really stayed with me all these years is what I discovered as part of that team. I discovered this paradox, and it's a paradox that successful organizations share. Next slide, please. So as I went to work inside the organization, nearly everyone, except the general manager, thought this was a terrible idea. They had many stories about previous failures. They had harsh criticism about our capabilities and our capacity, and just flat out thought this was a terrible thing to do. So I spent about the first year, frankly, just having those conversations and trying to say, well, let's at least give it a try. The other side of that paradox, though, is I was responsible to actually close the contracts with these new external customers. And they were convinced that HP had the best technology in the world at that time. And they were gladly willing to sign agreements to pay 3 times what our internal customers would pay. So how can these both be true? How can these both be true? And HP went on to become a leading supplier in this emerging business. That chance meeting at Berkeley, it really shaped my life. Serendipity it is a thing. It is real. And I'm always looking at that paradox, looking at where successful organizations, can unleash these capabilities to create new value. Over my career, I've supported launched over 46 initiatives in multiple sectors, including higher education. And also worked with my colleagues in industry, but also in academia, sort of researching this basic phenomenon. Why is it that successful organizations have so much difficulty? And I've learned 3 fundamentals that we've applied here at Impact Studio. Next slide, please. The first one was actually recently included in some research that was published in HBR, which did a study looking at resource allocation. And what they discovered is that allocating resources in a consistent, ongoing way to what we would describe as adjacent innovation, even as small as 5% of what would be viewed as sort of the new product development budget, had a significant impact on the overall growth trajectory for the organization. So consistent allocation of resources is one of the keys. Secondly, as I think we all understand, these new initiatives are higher uncertainty, they're higher potential. So a disciplined portfolio of opportunities is really important so that we can invest and then see those opportunities grow and as a portfolio. And then again, many ideas. So sourcing as many interesting ideas as possible, using a disciplined process to select those, and then developing the best ones through a proven methodology. These are the 3 fundamentals. Next slide, please. I'm looking back now 3 years. I'm really thankful that Provost Fazer invited me to join OSU 3 years ago and do the work that I love doing. I mean, this is magic, for me. And also I get to return to my Beaver roots, so that's even better. As he shared at the last Academic Strategies Committee meeting, really the mission is to manage this portfolio, develop and manage this portfolio of opportunities through a deliberate process, to surface as many ideas as we can, to vet those ideas, and then look at them closely and then invest in those that are promising. We have an opportunity to get a number of ideas from inside of OSU, and I'm excited about ideas coming in from our external partners as well, as was the case when I was in Berkeley. That was an idea that came in from the outside, where that individual looked at us and said, you would be a world leader in this space if you would only consider it. And as Ed mentioned, this is really kind of motivated out of the Vision 2030 work. And so I'm very excited to be a part of it. Fortunately, my experience at OSU was quite different, actually, in a lot of ways, because OSU has these 2 great examples of adjacent innovation, eCampus and Into OSU, and there are more, but if you talk to the folks, and I have, that were at the very beginning of those initiatives, they'll tell you stories about serendipity, of chance meetings, sitting next to people on airplanes, good fortune, and they'll talk about a lot of uncertainty, trying to navigate a complex organizational structure, not knowing where their funding is going to be coming from. And they had to manage through these scenarios for years, to get where they are today. They didn't have the benefit of an established process at the university level for sponsorship and investment. Imagine, and I think this conversation has come up earlier in the board, it sounds, imagine if eCampus and Into OSU were not part of OSU today. That's the stark reality that many of our peer institutions face. We can't be in that position. We need to be ahead of this, and that's our objective and mission. Next slide, please. I found that getting organizations to consider the possibility of adjacent innovation is pretty easy. I mean, it's a simple concept. Unfortunately, the longitudinal research in this domain, as well as many of the peers I've had throughout my career, tell a different story. And in fact, the more successful an organization is, the more horrific, in many cases, their track record is in terms of developing and sustaining a portfolio of adjacent innovation. I can give you many examples and reasons of why, but again, we're applying those lessons here in the Impact Studio. So what are those key fundamentals again? As previously mentioned, we start with a lot of ideas from everywhere. The best are selected by the Impact Studio Advisory Committee, which is a really important group that really brings a lot of diversity and thinking to our process. The initiatives go through this rather rigorous, difficult development process that leads them to create an investment grade proposal, which is then brought back to the advisory committee and to the provost for a decision. After that, we launch the initiatives and incubation and pilot and so forth, and they're monitored and supported through that process as we determine whether the opportunities actually are going to deliver as we hope. Next slide, please. Our results over the last 3 years are promising. We are on the right track. So I'd like to share some of the financial metrics in the portfolio here. We look at, as Ed mentioned previously, we look at net revenue. Net revenue is defined as the net revenue or the incremental revenues less the incremental cost. And so that's what our kind of our financial management point is. And this shows two particular views of that. So net revenue break-even time, Ed mentioned earlier, which is if you take all of the costs associated with Impact Studio and the initiatives we've invested in, when will we actually break even as a portfolio? When we first started, the lowest line on this graph, so it showed that we were expecting that to happen in 23-24 timeframe. But as the portfolio has grown and as some of the initiatives have started to move into the early phase of scale up, you can see that we're now going to be breaking even in 2021 as a total portfolio. The second graph shows net revenue, net present value. So this is where we look at the discounted net revenue from each of the initiatives over a 10-year period. And you can see a couple things from these graphs, the bar chart on the right. First of all, you can see how we've added new initiatives to the portfolio, which is diversifying it. And then, of course, the overall value of the portfolio is increasing as well. You know, our goal is to create a portfolio that is highly predictable in terms of performance at a portfolio level, not at an individual initiative level. Statistics show we need to get to about 20 initiatives. And so by adding 2 initiatives per year, we will soon be there. And if we stay the course, the Impact Studio will deliver a predictable financial portfolio. Next slide, please. Time won't permit me to talk about all the initiatives, but I'll just share a few things here quickly, and then I want to highlight 2 that we're going to talk a little bit more about. You know, we assess the new opportunities on a lot of different vectors. One of those is how it aligns to our strategic goals. We look at external impact, we look at net revenue, we look at culture change, we look at teaching mission and so forth. But it's kind of interesting also to just put them in this lens for a moment and say, how are these moving the various SP 4.0 goals? And you can see that transformative education, visible impact in Oregon, and culture of belonging, collaboration, and innovation are all, you know, if you will, have initiatives in that center point. We're moving innovation and scholarship along in many ways as well. So there's a lot of opportunities here to add ideas that help address or move certain aspects of the strategic plan forward. Next slide, please. So I've been talking at this sort of meta level about this Impact Studio process and portfolio and sort of how we do it. But I want to be clear, the real story can only be told if you look at the people who have been doing this work, and Ed mentioned a moment ago, over 120 people in the last 3 years have gone way, way beyond the norm to make an impact and move our initiatives forward. And they're actually on our web page. So if you'd be interested in browsing that all-star team across the campus and externally as well. Each initiative is led by a core team. Each initiative has sponsors that are supporting the initiative and then are prepared to take it on and to scale up if it's successful. And then we have the excellent advisors I mentioned earlier. I'd like to talk about 2 initiatives. These are the 2 that came through in 2020. Yes, these were done completely virtually, which was a new experience. So next slide, please. So International Online is an initiative where we are looking at how we take online education into international markets. It's a nascent market. There is very little structure in the international online market. It's a tremendous opportunity. Just an example of the kinds of offerings we would be looking at is online degree prep programs, fully online degrees, and also what we call hybrid degrees, where individuals would start, let's say, in country and then complete their degree on campus. This initiative you can show in the sort of the quadrant in the upper right corner is it really brings us both to new audiences, but new offerings. And so the capabilities we're leveraging here couldn't be stronger. I mean, if you look at what OSU has to bring, what Into OSU has to bring, what eCampus has to bring, and what Into OSU, university partners have to bring, this is some frankly globally leading capabilities that we have here. Our plan is that we have a series of pilots. As I said, the market is very new. And so we have to do some experimenting. And so in pilot phase 2, this next fall, we'll be launching a set of undergraduate and graduate degrees. We'll be experimenting with exactly how to dial in the student support for these individuals, which target geographies, the pricing associated with these, and what channels are best to reach these learners. So and all of these learnings will position OSU in a tremendous space as we go forward. Next slide, please. The last initiative that came, the other initiative that came through this year, I could not be more excited about. It's called Pathways to OSU. We had an amazing team that took a very deep dive and looked at what kinds of programs could OSU and our partners develop that would improve student success and student access for Black, Native American, Alaska Native, and Latinx students. Our proposal engages partners inside and outside of the university to co-design each program based on the needs expressed by these students and families, community-based organizations, existing programs, as well as school districts. This model is one of culturally responsive engagement, and it's proven. It's a proven model, and it will work. We've also conceived in the lower right corner this concept of a backbone. The backbone is a tool and an approach to coordinate a broad ecosystem that must come together in a collective impact model to serve these communities. We must remain engaged with students and families and anticipate the transitions that disrupt their plans to achieve their dream of completing a college degree. So the last thing I'll mention about Pathways, it's a very big idea. It's bigger than OSU, and the leadership of the university is also in conversations with state, university, and private partners to gauge effort in a more of a statewide effort. So this has a larger potential impact as well. Next slide, please. So in closing, Impact Studio's mission is to develop and manage a portfolio of initiatives through a deliberate process to surface new innovative ideas, vet those ideas, and then allocate resources that look to those that look promising. We solicit ideas from everyone, from those of you in the university and from those of you who are our partners. I'm very excited to discuss with any of you your interest in these initiatives, the ideas you have, or answer any of your questions. Thank you.